So just to remind us about what's happening in the background of these prophecies, Israel forever, really, forever since they were founded as a nation, have been unfaithful to God. So even when Moses was given the Ten Commandments, Israel were down at the bottom of the mountain worshipping a golden calf. You see all the way through the books of the Kings that they constantly turned away from God. And ultimately what happened is God decided he was going to have to turn away from them in order to get their attention. And that leads to what becomes known as the exile, which is where at the end of the books of the Kings, Jerusalem gets destroyed and the people of Israel get taken off to Babylon, where they have to live in a foreign land. And Isaiah is prophesying and he's talking about that event. And one of the things that you can see is the heart of God struggling with the fact that he's ultimately going to have to punish this people who are his children. They are his nation. He loves them so much. And it says in verse 1 of chapter 14, the Lord will have compassion on Jacob. Once again, he will choose Israel and will settle them in their own land. Ultimately, it's saying, I'm going to turn away from you for a time, but then I'm going to bring you back to myself. And that is what ends up happening. But the rest of this bit is all about prophecies against other nations. So from verse 3 onwards, really, it's talking about Babylon, and it's saying, you know, Babylon, this nation that seems so powerful and so mighty, and the king of Babylon who sits on his throne and everyone's afraid of him, he's going to be brought low, even as we now, the people of Israel, are weak and broken. And then if you turn over the page, you've got the prophecy against the Philistines in verse 28, and then in chapter 15, the prophecy against Moab, all of which predicts the destruction of the various nations around Israel. One thing for us just to consider as we dwell on this passage, which can be quite a difficult passage to read, is the fact that no empire, no human empire, will last forever. So if you were to be there in Babylon at the height of its power, when it was this mega superpower, you'd have walked through the streets of the city of Babylon. You would have seen the hanging gardens of Babylon, which were one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. You would have seen the great temples, the various idols and gods that they worshipped. You would have seen a thriving economy. You would have seen a massive army, and it would have almost been beyond comprehension to think that ultimately this nation would be laid low. And yet it was, within 100 years. The same is true today. No superpower and no nation will last forever. It can probably seem like that when we look around at the power that we see in the world around us, and the wealth and the armies and all of this. But there is only one kingdom that will last forever, and it's the kingdom of Jesus. And there's a moment when the disciples are wandering through Jerusalem with Jesus, and they look around at the temple and they think, oh my word, look at the size of these stones, it's so impressive. And Jesus tells them, I tell you the truth, every single one of these stones is going to be torn down. And he prophesies the end of, ultimately, the temple in Jerusalem. Later he references his own body as a temple, and he says, but I will be raised up again 3 days later. Invest in the kingdom of heaven. That's the point. Invest in the kingdom of heaven. This is the only kingdom that will last forever.